Disclaimer. This podcast includes content created using artificial intelligence tools. All information is for general purposes only and does not constitute financial, investment, legal, or regulatory advice. Listeners should verify information independently and consult qualified professionals for personalized guidance.
Welcome to the Luxembourg Fundcast.
Before we continue, we'd like to mention that the Luxembourg Fundcast is created and produced by Bertrand Mario, a practicing regulatory lawyer admitted to the Luxembourg and Paris bars. The mission of this podcast is to bring clear, free, and reliable information sourced from official references that are carefully curated and continually updated and refined through high-standard, evolving prompt and context engineering on Luxembourg's financial regulation and investment funds to professionals and anyone interested in the Luxembourg Financial Center. I am your host, and today we are navigating the intricate, occasionally opaque, and eternally critical labyrinth of substance here in the Grand Duchy.
And we should stress that our analysis is absolutely current. We're recording this as of today, the 25th of November, 2025.
Indeed. For the last, 2 years, the entire European fund industry has been bracing for the arrival of the Unshell Directive ATAD 3.
Which proposed these really rigid quantitative tests for shell entities. But, the landscape has just dramatically shifted. As of mid-2025, that directive, in its aggressive standalone form, it's dead.
It's a classic European pivot, isn't it? We went from anticipating one massive, prescriptive new regulation from Brussels to facing a sharpened, more data-driven domestic toolkit.
Exactly. The threat of non-compliance hasn't gone away at all. It's simply changed uniforms.
So today we're providing you with the essential shortcut to understanding this new reality. We will dissect the who, what, where, when, why, and how of substance compliance.
Our deep dive today is focused entirely on the practical realities of operating right here, right now. We want to show you exactly where the regulatory pressure points lie now that, the immediate legislative threat from ATAD 3 has been neutralized.
And because that's happened, regulators are forced to double down on the frameworks they already have.
That's the key.
And to anchor our conversation, we have 3 key takeaways for you right out of the gate. Number 1, the Unshell retreat.
Yes, the EU Council officially abandoned the standalone ATAD 3 back in June 2025. This shifts enforcement back to existing strengthened frameworks. Think reporting obligations under DA6 and these generalized abuse of law provisions.
Takeaway number 2, digital enforcement.
This is a big one. The CSSF, that's the Commission de Surveillance du Secteur Financier.
Our financial regulator.
Right. They now rely heavily on the mandatory annual self-assessment questionnaire, or SAQ. It's all submitted through the eDesk platform, and this really transforms substance from a vague legal concept into a binary auditable data set they can screen with algorithms.
And number 3, the cost of reality.
Substance is no longer a cost center to be minimized. It is, and you have to see it this way, a significant and necessary investment.
Why the change?
It's due to rising fees for qualified independent personnel and the non-negotiable cost of securing a verifiable physical presence and, of course, sophisticated documentation.
All right, let's get into it.
Let's begin with that seismic political shift that really defined the summer. The shelving of the Unshell Directive proposal.
That decision came directly from the ECOFIN Council meeting on the 20th of June, 2025. After years of anticipation, that outcome was ace-remating. It was genuinely remarkable.
Absolutely. The legislative proposal was shelved, but it's critical to understand why. The motivation behind it? It was framed as regulatory rationalization, not leniency.
So what was the official reason?
The Council determined there were substantial overlaps between the proposed ATAD 3 requirements and existing anti-avoidance measures.
So they argued it was redundant.
Pretty much, particularly with the hallmarks already covered in DC6, that's the Directive on Administrative Cooperation.
So the official line was simplification, that adding ATAD 3 would violate the EU's newly prioritized, and I'm quoting here, tax simplification and decluttering agenda. That sounds almost too neat for EU tax law, doesn't it?
It does. While simplification is the stated goal, the political reality is that the will to impose a complicated, politically explosive quantitative test, it just evaporated.
Especially when weighed against the rhetoric of European competitiveness and cutting red tape.
Exactly. But, as you noted, the threat of scrutiny hasn't disappeared. It's just been refined and, you could say, delegated.
How so?
Precisely. The threat remains through 2 main mechanisms. First, strengthened domestic definitions of abuse of law. And second, crucially, the European Commission's continued very active use of infringement proceedings.
So they're going after the member states themselves.
They are. They are actively pursuing jurisdictions, including Luxembourg and Belgium, for non-compliance with existing anti-tax avoidance directives ATAD 1 and 2. The Commission is basically telling them, you have the tools to enforce substance, and we expect you to use them robustly, or face sanctions yourself.
Which puts enormous pressure on domestic regulators and tax authorities to perform.
Enormous pressure.
That pressure brings the regulatory spotlight directly onto Luxembourg's domestic rulebook. So with ATAD 3 off the table, the definition of substance reverts to, what, a triad of foundational domestic pillars.
That is exactly right. This is where practitioners need to focus their attention now. We revert to our local bedrock, which, I should add, has been rigorously tested over the years.
Okay, so what's Pillar 1?
Pillar 1 is the Law of 31 May 1999, known as the Domiciliation Law. This is the fundamental requirement for any company domiciled here. It mandates a real presence.
And real presence means?
It means having a physical space that allows for the effective management of the company. A mere post box just won't cut it.
What's fascinating here is the enforcement. That law effectively deputizes the domiciliation agent, your service provider, as the first line of regulatory defense.
It does, and that's the key. The dom agent is legally responsible for verifying this real presence, and their liability is severe. I mean, if they fail to comply, they face fines from 1,250 euros up to 125,000 euros.
Wow. That liability basically transforms them into an involuntary co-auditor for the regulator.
It does. It ensures they apply rigorous and sometimes commercially burdensome screening to every single client.
Okay, moving to the fund industry's governance structure. Pillar 2 is CSSF, Circular 18698. This is really the definitive operational guide, isn't it?
It's the Bible, really. Circular 18698 applies to all Luxembourg investment fund managers, including AIFM's alternative investment fund managers and UCITE's management companies.
And the standard.
Operational realism. It explicitly prohibits letterbox entities and demands that you demonstrate adequate human and technical resources to execute all your functions.
And this circular, this is the source of the famous Four Eyes rule, right?
Yes. It mandates that at least 2 conducting officers must be effectively present physically here in Luxembourg to direct the business.
It's all about ensuring the core decision-making. The mind and management is local,
demonstrable, and physically accountable to the regulator. That's the point.
And finally, we have the ultimate legal backstop used by the tax authorities. Pillar 3, the General Anti-Abuse Rule, or GAR.
The GAR, which came in through the implementation of ATAD 1, is, well, it's the taxman's weapon of last resort.
Yeah.
It allows tax authorities to disregard arrangements put in place mainly to obtain a tax advantage that is not genuine.
So the whole game becomes proving that your arrangement is genuine.
Exactly. And that's the critical question for fund managers.
And genuine is defined as reflecting valid commercial reasons which reflect economic reality. That sounds inherently subjective. How does a fund manager achieve certainty?
Certainty is the struggle. It means the fund has to constantly demonstrate a robust economic justification for every decision. If, for instance, a financing structure is placed here.
It's not enough to just have a legal contract.
Not at all. You need to show local credit committees, local expertise, local risk assessment, real economic activity. Otherwise, the tax authority can just disregard the entire setup based on the GAR.
So we've covered the legal framework. The GAR forces economic reality. But how does the CSSF actually measure and enforce that reality in late 2025?
Right, that brings us to the practicalities. The digital shield.
The self-assessment questionnaire.
The transition has been profound. We've moved from periodic, expensive on-site visits to proactive, perpetual data collection. The CSSF's main enforcement mechanism now is the digital panopticon, the mandatory annual SAQ.
And this isn't just an annual filing, a PDF you upload. It's a dynamic data entry portal via eDesk. Why the heavy investment in this platform?
Because it allows the CSSF to algorithmically screen thousands of regulated entities at the same time for numerical inconsistencies.
So it turns substance into a binary audit.
It does. For example, if you check the box claiming to have 3 local staff, but then you input 0 staff costs and 0 Social Security contributions in a different section, well, that triggers an immediate high-priority red flag.
And I understand the system uses advanced integration, the S3 protocol, for structured file transmission. So it's not just looking at this year's data in isolation.
Absolutely not. It cross-references information year over year. The system is designed to track trends. Any sudden unexplained deviation, a change in management location, fluctuating personnel numbers without corresponding cost changes, That will inevitably lead to an automated deficiency letter.
Or an audit triggered by the algorithm itself. And the deadlines are tight.
Unforgiving. 4 months after year-end for IFMs and 3 months for UCIs.
Okay, beyond the SAQ, documentation is still your primary shield. Let's dissect the rigor needed in 2 critical contracts, starting with the domiciliation agreement.
This agreement is strictly governed by the 1999 law and CSSF Circular 0129. It has to contain mandatory clauses that are no longer just boilerplate. You must explicitly grant the company the right to use the premises for shareholder and board meetings.
To verify that requirement for central administration.
Precisely. And the agent must retain a permanent, unrestricted right to inspect the books.
Which is purely self-preservation for the agent, isn't it?
Entirely. The DOM agent carries significant AML-CFT liability, so they have to have constant access. This protects the regulated agent from liability contagion if their client is non-compliant.
Yeah, and the termination clauses.
Vital. The agent must have immediate, extraordinary termination rights if the client violates AML laws. It protects the agent's own reputation and, of course, their license.
Okay, secondly, the independent director appointment letter. This document speaks directly to the quality of that mind and management.
2 crucial requirements stand out today. First, the letter has to confirm that the director acknowledges they have sufficient time to do their duties.
Because the CSSF is actively monitoring overboarding.
They are, where directors take on too many mandates. If a director holds 70 mandates, the regulator's database will flag that claim of sufficient time as, let's say, suspicious.
And the second key factor is about payment wording. This follows that critical CJEU judgment in case C28822 on VAT.
Yes, that ruling clarified a long-standing ambiguity. Directors' fees for board membership are now generally considered outside the scope of value-added tax. So the appointment letter must explicitly reflect this shift in the fee structure.
Stating that the gross fee is not subject to VAT based on current Luxembourg jurisprudence.
Exactly right.
Okay, let's pivot to the economics. Substance is the necessary premium for market access. And given this heightened scrutiny and the liability risks, the financial cost of operating legitimately in Luxembourg it's risen dramatically.
It's an investment. It has to be seen that way. And that investment requires strategic negotiation, particularly of the service level agreement, the SLA, with your service provider.
Where's the main battleground in that negotiation?
Liability caps, no question. Providers typically propose a cap limited to 1 year of fees. But sophisticated investors have to push hard to negotiate a multiple, say, 3 to 5 times annual fees.
And critically,
you must insist on carving out uncapped liability for gross negligence and willful misconduct. If an agent's willful failure leads to regulatory sanctions, a small fixed cap is meaningless.
And on indemnification, the key is to avoid broad language that forces the fund to cover the agent's own mistakes.
Correct. The indemnity you provide to the agent has to be tightly tied to the proper performance of your instructions. It must explicitly exclude any losses from the agent's negligence, fraud, or failure to perform its own duties.
We also need to talk about control over core functions, especially delegation to international affiliates.
Under Circular 18698, core management functions simply cannot be delegated outside Luxembourg without imperiling the AIFM license itself. The SLA must clearly require the agent's prior written consent if any tasks are delegated. You need that transparent audit trail.
So given this rigorous landscape, what does essential sustenance actually cost in late 2025? Let's talk pricing benchmarks, starting with independent directors.
Well, scarcity, complexity, and personal liability are driving these prices up. For a standard mandate on a non-complex alternative investment fund, you're looking at 20,000 to 35,000 euros annually.
And for more complex mandates?
For, say, a large real estate investment trust or a chairperson role, fees easily exceed 50,000 euros.
The strategic advice here is always to negotiate on the ad hoc fees, right? The cost of extra meetings, not the base retainer.
Exactly. You negotiate the cost of the 10th board meeting. You don't negotiate on the core base fee because that just signals a misunderstanding of the governance value and the liability they're taking on.
What about physical presence? Office rents remain a substantial non-negotiable expense.
They do. Luxembourg city vacancy is critically low, hovering around 3.9%. Prime rents are stable at about 54 euros per square meter per month.
So what does that translate to?
It means a management company needing just the regulatory minimum of 100 square meters has to budget nearly 65,000 euros annually for base rent alone, and that's before service charges or fit-out costs.
Finally, corporate services. The basic domiciliation fee can seem cheap, But the real cost is in the hourly billing.
Standard domiciliation is relatively inexpensive, maybe 2,500 to 5,000 euros. But the hidden cost is the hourly rates for CorpSec and accounting support,
Which can be.
anywhere from 150 to 300 euros per hour. The smart strategy is to negotiate a comprehensive fixed fee for all standard corporate secretarial work. It avoids that unpredictable meter anxiety all year.
Substance doesn't exist in a vacuum, of course. It's a highly competitive marketplace. We have to look at the eternal rivalry, Luxembourg versus Ireland.
As of 2025, the division of labor is stark. Luxembourg is the uncontested king of private assets. We command 48% of the cross-border fund market in this area.
And that dominance is fueled by structural flexibility, specifically the SCSP, the Special Limited Partnership, and the fast-track RAIF regime.
Precisely. Private asset investors are willing to accept the higher substance costs here because of that flexibility and speed to market. Ireland, on the other hand, remains the emperor of ETFs and U.S.-centric funds.
Right. Ireland dominates the European exchange-traded fund sector, holding 78% of that market. And the reason for that is purely tax-driven, isn't it?
It is. The U.S.-Ireland double tax treaty gives Irish-domiciled funds a 15% withholding tax on U.S. dividends. Luxembourg typically faces 30%. For any fund tracking U.S. equities, that dividend leakage it's structurally insurmountable for Luxembourg.
We also have to note the major growth area within Luxembourg itself, private debt. Assets under management growth has been double-digit.
This boom was really driven by banks retreating from core lending after the financial crisis. But the substance implication for these debt funds is exceptionally high. The CSSF expects to see real credit committees, local underwriting expertise, and loan origination functions happening in Luxembourg.
You can't just outsource your most critical value creation function.
Not and maintain credible substance.
Yeah.
No way.
Now, for our final section, the horizon. What lies beyond 2025? Knowing the regulators are now fully utilizing these data and digital tools.
The first major development is the retailization of private assets. This is driven by the updated LTIF 2.0, the European Long-Term Investment Fund regime, which is finally gaining real traction.
And dealing with retail investors.
Yeah.
That requires a heavier, more consumer protection-focused substance.
It does. It's no longer enough to have a passive board. You need dedicated staff and processes for complaints handling, strict marketing oversight, and the capacity to handle real-time updates of complex key information documents. The operational burden is just dramatically higher.
And the prediction we highlighted earlier, the era of the automated data-driven audit.
I expect the CSSF will increasingly use AI not just to screen the SAQ data, but to cross-reference it with external filings, specifically tax filings and Social Security contributions.
So automated deficiency letters will become common.
I think so. If your regulatory filings claim 2 employees, but your tax filings show 0 Social Security contributions, the system will flag that inconsistency automatically.
And finally, a word of caution on the tax side. ATAD 3 may be dormant, but the tax enforcer will be back.
The European Commission is not giving up its fight against tax base erosion. You should expect renewed, intense focus on transfer pricing documentation and beneficial ownership definitions, all driven by those ongoing EC infringement cases.
So Luxembourg will be pressured to tighten its transfer pricing audits.
To ensure compliance and avoid direct regulatory conflict with Brussels. Absolutely.
Let us reiterate the 3 core takeaways from today's deep dive into this new reality of substance.
First, ATAD 3's abandonment means domestic scrutiny is heightened. The enforcement weight now falls entirely on the General Anti-Abuse Rule and the 1999 Domiciliation Law. Don't confuse the absence of a new EU law with a lack of rules.
Second, the SAQ is your single point of failure. This self-assessment questionnaire, submitted digitally via eDesk, demands absolute consistency across all your data points. You have to treat it with the gravity of your audited financial statements.
Because the CSSF's AI engine certainly will. And third, substance is an investment. The rising costs of directors, offices, and sophisticated agreements are the necessary premium for operating in the competitive private asset market that Luxembourg continues to dominate.
So the essential lesson here is that consistency across all reporting channels, legal, regulatory, financial issuer, is now completely non-negotiable for compliance. Surviving this new automated, data-driven audit environment means your legal substance must align perfectly with your tax reality and your regulatory disclosure.
This podcast is a collaborative and free resource that improves continually, so your comments or requests for new topics are highly welcome, especially on YouTube. We want to be a helpful strength for everyone working in the Luxembourg Financial Center at all levels. We are often asked how you can help us. Well, a great way to help is by subscribing to our shows on all major podcast platforms, including Spotify, as well as on Apple Podcasts, where a 5-star rating would really help us. You can also like our videos and subscribe to our YouTube channels, Rigor Media and Bertrand Mario Avocats. We also invite you to follow or connect with Bertrand Mario on LinkedIn and to like and comment on our posts there. All relevant links will be available in the show notes. It was the Luxembourg Fundcast for you today.
Final disclaimer. This podcast includes content created using artificial intelligence tools. All information is for general purposes only and does not constitute financial, investment, legal, or regulatory advice. Listeners should verify information independently and consult qualified professionals for personalized guidance.